Today's speaker is none other than Piyush Khaitan. He's obviously a member of the India Study Circle. He's also the chairman of the Airmail Society India Foundation. He's chairman for the PCI Philatelic Trust. He's the person who organized MCPAX 25. It's the first international virtual air philatelic and astrophilatelic exhibition. His Crash Mail exhibit won the Champion of Champions award at AmritPAX 23, which I was there. It was an amazing show. He's a collector, researcher, exhibitor, author, and speaker on Indian airmails. He also maintains 4 different websites focused on Indian airmails and related topics. Piyush, please take over.
So, hello everybody, and great to be here. Talking to all of you about the birth of airmail. Very interesting subject, and I'll take about 25, maybe 30 minutes to cover this talk. Plenty of time for question, answer, feedback, etc. Just one thing as I start is following the convention, I will refer to places contemporaneously. So what is Prayagraj today? When the event happened was Allahabad, so I'll refer to it as Allahabad. Similarly, Calcutta, for example, was the name when the event happened, though it is Kolkata now, so I will use the contemporaneous names. So let's jump right into it. So life at Allahabad was certainly very relaxed. You see this postcard, there's a gentleman having a reasonably relaxed time. And it says, time somehow seems to fly away at Allahabad, come and test it. I really like the choice of words, time flies away, because something was going to fly very soon. So this is a 1909 postcard which is mailed from Allahabad. And if I were to just read what he's written there, quite cheeky, he says, "Dear Leo, come and test it. There's plenty of room for one more on the left or right. It's if you can persuade dear Lester E. to accompany you. This is what I'm looking forward to the most." So obviously, just 1 year before, the world changed with airmails being introduced commercially, Allahabad was considered a fairly relaxed place. Okay, so what I have here is a leaflet. I've split it into 2 just to make it easy for everyone to see. It's difficult for me to describe what this is. Is it like a press release? Is it a postal notice? Is it something just printed by some newspaper? But the bottom, if you look on the right-hand side at the bottom, it has 356-11. So I feel that it's some kind of official communication of 1911. But I'm going to take 2 minutes to read this out because this gives you a very good context to all the events that we are going to cover today. It says, aviation at Allahabad, the first aerial post. Allahabad is likely to visit an experiment of an interesting nature. It will be remembered that during the siege of Paris in 1871, the only means of communication with the outer world open to the besieged was the dispatch of letters by means of balloon. In time of war, any city in the world might find itself similarly placed. Captain W. Wyndham, who has been associated with the aeroplane since its adoption, wishes, by means of practical experiment, to demonstrate how this latest achievement or modern invention can be adapted to meet such a situation. An aeroplane flying at night would be difficult to discover, and even if discovered, would be almost impossible to hit. Captain Wyndham has accordingly obtained special permission from the Postmaster General of the United Provinces of Agra and Awadh, approved and sanctioned by the Director General of Post Offices in India, to inaugurate the first aerial post. It will be carried from the UP exhibition to a post office receiving station outside the exhibition, and from there the letters will be dispatched to any part of the world to which they may be addressed. Both the Directors General and Postmaster General are highly interested in the experiment, and the latter will personally supervise the necessary details. The exhibition post office will impress each stamp with a die specially cut in the postal workshop at Aligarh, incorporating a design of the actual aeroplane on which the mail is to be carried, encircled by an inscription containing the words Aerial Post Allahabad Exhibition, together with the year and date of dispatch. These letters will be the first in the world to be dispatched by means of an aeroplane from a government post office in the ordinary course of its business, and will be carried by Monsieur H. Peke, the well-known aviator, from the exhibition to the receiving office. It is anticipated that number of people, including stamp collectors and others, in India and elsewhere, will avail themselves of this unique opportunity of sending to their friends letters which in time may become valuable in consequence of having been through the first communication officially carried through the air by aeroplane under post office regulations. Considerations of weight and space make it necessary to place a strict limit on the size and number of letters carried. It is therefore proposed to charge a nominal sum of 6 annas on each letter or postcard so carried. This amount will be given without deduction as a donation to the new buildings of the Oxford and Cambridge Hostel, Allahabad. The post office will sanction no charge whatsoever over and above the ordinary rates of postage, and the additional 6 annas will be made over to the above charity is simply a means to prevent the overloading of the mail, and at the same time to help the above excellent institution in its educational work among Indian students. So this pretty much summarizes and captures the essence of what we are going to discuss today. So a little bit of context here. This is something you all know. The unit of currency was the rupee. 1 rupee was divided into 16 annas, each anna 12 pi. Similarly, for inland postage, we use the tola, which is about 11.6 grams. For overseas postage, it was ounces, which was about 28.4 grams. So with this, we come to the UP exhibition. This is the place where the flight took place. So this exhibition was held from December 1910 all the way till end of February. On 18th February 1911 at 5:30 p.m., Henri Peke took off from the exhibition grounds at Allahabad in a Humber Sommer biplane. He flew over the Jamuna River in the direction of Naini Junction, about 6 miles away, where he deposited the mail. He then returned immediately to land again at the exhibition grounds, having completed the entire journey in 13 minutes. And the mail consisted of about 6,500 letters and postcards. The postcard that we see here has the welcome arch of the Allahabad exhibition right there. And flying above that, you can see the Humber Sommer plane. So the plane had come much earlier, before the 18th February flight, and had done several demonstration flights. So this is a picture taken of the plane flying there. And on the other side of the postcard, we see that it was carried postally with the magenta cancellation that was specially prepared for mail carried on the 1911 flight. So it's addressed to Alipur, and it is franked half anna. The inland postcard rate was quarter anna at that time. So this has been franked double the inland postcard rate. Some other interesting material linked to the flight. So the 6 anna that we had to pay as the fee for the sending mail on this flight, people could also mail this in Britain by sending a 6 pence postal order. And you see here the counterfile of a postal order which came accompanying a letter. In the middle, we have the calling card of the postmaster of Allahabad, Mr. Besan. And on the right-hand side is using UP exhibition stationery, the post office stationery of the UP exhibition. There is a letter which is basically talks about the difficulties the person experienced in sending the cover and complaining that the 6 anna extra charge was exorbitant. So this is all related to the flight. On the left here, we have what is called the die proof So the die was made and the cancellations were to be affixed in magenta, but a limited number of black color cancellations were used, typically either as used in the die-proof postcard you see on the left, or on certain letters carried by important people or sent by them. So this one, the postcard is a quarter anna postcard, which is the correct rate for inland postage. And on the reverse, it says, with the founder's compliments. Okay. And it is signed by W. Wyndham. And he further writes, the only ones done in black. So this is obviously something collectors like to go for. More interesting is the cover on the right, which is again cancelled by the black cachet, with the inland ordinary letter rate of half anna being franked at double. So it's a 1 anna franking. And it is addressed to Reverend L.K. Morton at the Oxford and Cambridge hostel. So this is addressed to the very hostel in whose aid all the money was being raised from this flight. And this is the only known cover addressed to the Oxford and Cambridge hostel. Henry Peke was the pilot. What you see on the left-hand side is a signed photograph of him. The signature here is much later. You see, he lived until 1974 and is known to have sort of prolifically signed a lot of postal, philatelic, memorabilia, etc. over the years. So this is not the 1911 signature, it's a much later signature. On the right-hand side is a postcard, which actually has a photograph of the plane with Peke sitting at the control. It's signed by him in original. And this is what Uttam Reddy has researched and written an article in the London Philatelist. He describes as a type 3 postcard. According to him, only 3 such postcards have been recorded. And again, this one has the magenta cachet and the black cachet. So both of them are here. So there was obviously something special about this one. About 40 of these postcards are known. They come in 2 varieties, what are described as type 1 and type 2. The only difference really being the line on the top, which the one on the left does not have the word Allahabad and has February 1811. The one on the right has the word Allahabad and has February 18, 1911. So these about 40 postcards are said to have been used. My own guess is the number would be closer to 60 or 70. These both also have been signed by Peke. The interesting thing is these postcards measure about 6 1/4 by 5 inches. And the postcard regulation was that for postcard rate, they have to be 5 1/2 by 3 1/2. So all of these were franked at the letter rate of half anna, not the postcard rate of quarter anna. Captain Wyndham was the organizer of this flight. He used to work for the Humber Motor Car Company, and he came to Bombay late into 1910. And he had a crate of this aircraft with him, which he had brought to India to demonstrate and to book orders for his company. So upon arrival in Bombay, he was instructed to immediately proceed to Allahabad and to demonstrate the aeroplane in the exhibition. What you see here on the right-hand side is the same postcard as we saw before, except that this one is signed not only by Peke, but also if you look at the bottom right, it is signed by Wyndham. It says W. Wyndham, and he describes himself as founder of Aerial Post. And again, it's addressed to Allahabad and franked half anna, which is the letter rate. This is another picture postcard which shows a cold morning in Allahabad. You can see the pilot sitting in the controls of the plane, and the gentleman in the white trench coat in the front is Wyndham. Again, it is carried on the flight, on mail on the flight, addressed to Pratapgarh. And again, these are not very commonly seen. Here on the left is a card which Wyndham had printed and inserted in a lot of covers he sent as souvenirs to various people. What is interesting here is he says the the last two lines, aeroplane under government post office regulation on 20th February 1911. Okay, so obviously the flight was intended for 20th February, but for some reason they decided to have it 2 days earlier on 18th February. On the right hand side, you can see a cover with two impressions of the magenta cachet, franked 1 anna, again double the ordinary rate, but addressed to Captain Wyndham at the club Allahabad. So again, haven't seen too much mail addressed to him, but here is one example. Three different types of postal registration marks have been observed on mail carried here. The one on the top right has the box with the number 110 and the R Allahabad black hand stamp applied all within the little box. So we call it the small registration label. This is a 3 rupee franking, obviously high value, done philatelically, addressed to Faizabad, and it has one more magenta cachet on it. The one on the bottom right has just the UP exhibition camp registration hand stamp. And the one on the left has what we call the long registration label. So this has the number 492 on a separate box on the left and space for the R Allahabad black hand stamp in a separate larger box. This is an official OHMS cover and has OHMS stamps on it, 6.5 anna. Again, can't really explain the franking, but I have not seen more mail with OHMS cover and OHMS franking on this flight. So this is an interesting cover to have as well. This is the first underpaid airmail in the world. Okay. This is addressed to an address in France to Mr. Stevenson, care of Thomas Cook in France. And it was franked 1 anna. So 1 anna was the empire rate, the ordinary letter rate for mail to Britain and empire countries. The rate to France was 2.5 anna. So it was underpaid 1.5 anna, taxed 30 centimes. Upon arrival, 30 centimes labels applied in France. And then it was a small label was put on top and it was redirected to Southampton in England, where it was finally delivered. And we can see on the back the different cachets as well as the Thomas Cook Paris violet stamp. There's a small article I have written on this, which was in the India Post 232, volume 58/3. People are interested. Now we come to overseas mail. Now you see all the stamps for the mail carried on this flight were not cancelled at the post office. The postmark was designed by Captain Walter Wyndham and they were authorized by the Postmaster General. But and the die was made at the Postal Work Allahabad. And although there was a post office in the exhibition ground, these mails were not accepted there, but they were handed to an official who was Reverend W.H. Holland, and he dealt with the mail in Monsieur Pequet's personal tent. Okay. Now on the left, I have a cover, quite a grubby looking cover, addressed to Mrs. Holland in England. I wonder if she was any relation to Reverend Holland, mother, wife, I don't know. But anyway, this is franked half anna. Now the letter rate was 1 anna, but this is explained by the cachet you find, which says found in inland section without contents. So this obviously went on the printed matter rate. In the middle, we have the only known cover sent to Jamaica, British West Indies, franked 1 anna, which is again the empire rate was applied there. And on the right is the cover addressed to Germany. This was the 2.5 anna UPU letter rate for overseas mail, correctly franked. We have some examples of inland mail here as well. On the left is a postmark sent to Mao, which is a quarter anna inland postcard rate. There's one sent to picture postcard to Allahabad, which is 3 pi, again quarter anna inland postcard rate. We have two covers here. The one on the left is franked 1 anna, and very cleverly the stamps have been spaced well apart, so he managed to obtain two cancellations on this cover. It's overstamped. And on the right, we have one which is franked 6 anna, but has managed to obtain three different postal cancellations here. So there's all kinds of fun stuff really happening on this flight. There's a lot of interesting mail. The largest known example I have seen, and there was an article in Signet by Mr. Devgaonkar, which is a cover with 17 caches. That is absolutely amazing. In fact, I will make it a point to take his permission and post an image in my presentation whenever I make one again. After the UP exhibition, of course, in September 1911 was the first airmail in Britain. This was from Hendon to Windsor to mark the coronation of George V. Captain Wyndham was called to England to organize this flight. He was later knighted and became Sir Walter Wyndham. This is a letter addressed to Ambala, India, and it is with contents. I haven't displayed the contents here, but again, it talks all about the flight and the excitement around it. So with this, I come to the end of my presentation. I have a few slides that I just want to take everybody through as well. So really, while 18th February 1911 is what brought the birth of airmail, which really brought the world much closer together. Those were occasions where you could write a letter to somebody and actually expect to get a reply back within a week or 10 days. It shrunk geographies tremendously. So what we want to do is to mark this day, 18th February each year, as World Airmail Day, and try to bring the world of aerophilatelists together and to celebrate it jointly all over the world. So the plan is to reach out to all societies all over the world, to have exhibitions, workshop, activities to celebrate World Airmail Day on 18th February. And over time, we intend to petition UNESCO to give this due importance and to register this as a World Airmail Day. The Airmail Society of India is organizing AMCPEX 25, which is the first international virtual aero and astrophilatelic exhibition. So this is 15th to 23rd February. We have a website, amcpex.com. The website has all information required. Entries are open already and close on 25th November. We have three categories. In competition class, we have 1, 5, and 8 frame. We have a novice class of 1, 3, and 5 frame for people who don't meet criteria to participate in competition class. And we have youth class in 3 age groups. And of course, there is a literature class. This is for aerophilately and astrophilately. Even single frame medals will be, single frame exhibits will be awarded medals, and AMSI members will be given special medals. We have patronage from FISA and the PCI for this exhibition. Thank you to both of them. And the event is being jointly sponsored by the American Airmail Society and Cosmos. So they have been promoting this also tremendously, and we've got very strong overseas participation in this event. We also have financial support and sponsorship from David Feldman, Robert Siegel, and Argyle Etkin. So they've given us a little money that we can spend and make this fun, because we've kept the entry fees really, really low. It's virtual. You just have to send PDF images, which means all the cost of mailing and insurance and all goes away. The entry fees also is typically 1/4 or 1/5 of what you would pay for a physical exhibition. And this is what the medal looks like. We've used the same 1911 cachet on the medal to commemorate the World Airmail Day. The Airmail Society India, of course, we are the new kid on the block, just formed in February this year. We have over 50 members now. We also have a YouTube channel, Havase, You should join that. And joining Airmail Society is really easy. Go to our website. It's a 3-minute process. It's 1,000 rupees for Indian members and $15 by PayPal for overseas members. I have 2 more slides. I'm going to just spend 10 seconds on them because this is more when it goes up on YouTube. People can pause here. All the inland postage rates at that time are here, as are the foreign postage rates. So with this, I've come to the end of my talk. Thank you very much, and open to any questions or feedback.
Well, Piyush, thank you very, very much for a fabulous presentation. At this point, we'll start with questions. If anybody's got any questions for Piyush, any comments, please raise your hand or put in the chat box, and I'll be monitoring it. You can pose, if you don't want to ask in person, just type your question in the chat box, and we'll go from there. So don't see any raised hands, and I don't see any questions in the chat box. Wow, Piyush, you must.
I have a question though.
Okay,
Sandeep.
go ahead, Apratim.
Yeah. Hey, Piyush, I think fantastic presentation, and of course, you don't need to say you don't need my feedback to say that they are excellent materials out there. Just one question with the specimen or the trial postmarks in black, were they ever carried, or were they specifically just being tried before the cards were flown?
So if you remember the slide, Apratim, which I showed, on the left was the stationary card. That was clearly a trial, a die proof, which was not carried postally. But the cover on the right-hand side, which was the Oxford and Cambridge hostel cover, that was certainly carried postally, as was the Type 3 postcard I showed you on this slide after that. So those were postally carried as well.
Okay, so basically, even the trials were carried. That's what I'm hearing, right?
The black cachet covers with the cancelled with the black cachet were postally carried. Yes, not all of them, but many were.
Okay.
I see Vice Marshal Kuruvilla raised his hand as well.
Yes. My query is, in addition to all these, cards and the covers, is there any other philatelic material carried by the aircraft on the first flight?
None that I'm aware, but I see people in this group who know much more than me. So I'll just pause here if anybody has seen anything other than postal material on the flight.
There was a suggestion that some newspaper were carried in this one. That's why I asked the question. Somebody has mentioned to me, but I have no proof. So that's why I was wondering whether you have anything to that.
I have not seen.
So we have a question from Ravi Vora. Ravi writes, can your presentation be shared at our local club in Denver?
So what we are going to do is, I think we're recording this, and the video will be put up on YouTube, Ravi. Separately, if you would like this presentation for your club, I will mail it to you.
Thanks.
Great.
Can
Sorry, go ahead, Ravi.
Yeah, thanks. Piyush, was an outstanding presentation, as everyone is acknowledging. A couple of questions in terms of research or surveys. Is there any research done in terms of different foreign destinations these flight covers were sent? You showed some very nice examples, I think 3 or 4 countries, and wonder if there is any more information or research done. Similarly, are there any references to different destinations within India?
So, Ravi, this is certainly a very interesting topic and something where a census would, I think, come out with very, very interesting findings. But I am not aware of any census right now carried out, even something like what we commonly call the Peke card. Like Jeffrey Brown writes that 40 were produced. Based on whatever little I have seen, I estimate maybe 60, 70. But there is no census carried out, unfortunately, on mail carried on this flight. It's a great subject. If somebody takes it up, I'm willing to support wholeheartedly.
We'll do that offline. Thanks.
All right. So the next question we have is from Adityan, and he's writing, is MCPEX 25, can we exhibit stamps carried by Airmail, or does it have to be exhibit on Airmail exclusively? Only exhibits Airmail, or can the exhibit stamps carried by Airmail?
Yeah. So we're trying to define Airmail a little more loosely here, just to encourage participation. So what I would say is that rather than give a blanket answer here and say yes or no, if he could just reach out to me, I'll be able to understand a little more and give an answer. But for the benefit of everybody in this meeting, we're trying to define Airmail a little loosely here. So anything that could be coming under the broad umbrella of Airmail, we would like to include in the exhibition.
Great. The next question I have, well, I only have initials BG. And the question is there any information available about the actual flight path taken by the plane? Did it fly from Allahabad to Calcutta, England, etc.?
So this was a flight over a distance of about 6 miles across the Jamuna River from Allahabad to Naini. The unfortunate thing is today there's not even a plaque to commemorate this flight up there, to say this is where Airmail was born, this is where the flight took off, or this is where the flight landed. So unfortunately, this is not there. But as Airmail Society of India, we have taken it as a to-do activity for 2025, that at the very least, can we put a commemoration plaque up there to recognize this event?
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Oh,
yeah, this is Jimmy. I have a question. I don't see I see the absence of Stephen Smith in this presentation. Is that because this was not in the same time frame, or?
So yes, this was, I think, a little before Stephen Smith really got active as the torchbearer of Indian Airmail. But there was one cover which I showed mailed to Germany. That one is authenticated on the reverse with a Stephen Smith signature. But that's pretty much all that I have of Stephen Smith in my 1911 collection.
Okay.
Wonderful. All right. The next question is from Thomas Putnangari. Thomas writes, my question is, while we know Airmail transformed the world when it started, was there also philatelic intent over and above actual sending of mail?
So if we take the 1911 flight as an example, most of the mail was philatelic in nature. I would say almost all was philatelic. And some of these, as you could see, were covers that were grossly overstamped. There was one I saw yesterday somewhere which had a 10 rupee franking. So it was largely philatelic in nature. But of course, as Airmail started covering greater distances and becoming materially meaningful, then I think commercial mail took off a lot.
Just a few minutes.
Great. Thank you.
Any other questions? Let's see. Okay, let's see. Shahid has a question. He says, regarding the Cache United Province Exhibition Camp UP, is it... Why is my goodness, sorry. Is it dated before February? Does it relate to the Airmail therefore?
So for the UP exhibition itself, special postal cancellations were made, and those you will find examples dated right from the time the exhibition started onwards. Those are not related to the flight. There are examples of covers with both caches, with both the UP exhibition and the first airmail cancellation. Those are connected to the flight, but only UP exhibition cancellations are not.
Great. So the next question is, so Dityan has another question. He says, one more question. While introducing the aerial post, was there any objection or anyone who did not like this idea?
Not that I'm aware of, but an interesting line to pursue. It would be great to see, because something like this would not have gone through without detractors. So maybe a little more research in the postal archives might turn out something interesting, but I'm not aware.
Okay, great. Any other questions? Let's see. Okay, so we have another question from Sovan Sahu. Did you already mention why the flight was pulled forward by 2 days versus original plan of 20th February 1911?
So what we know is the card that was printed by Wyndham to accompany cover sent by him mentions the date as 20th February. Now, whether 20th February was a locked date and they pulled it forward by 2 days, difficult to say. So what we have is really two data points. One is the card, printed card says 20th February, and that the flight happened on 18th February. But beyond that, we don't know much about why.
Great. Thank you. Another question from Rahul Ganguly. Rahul writes, was any additional charge levied while raising funds for the two hostels?
That was the 6 anna per postal article that was charged. Beyond that, it was just the regular postage that was put on the cover.
Great. Ravi has another question, and Ravi writes, was there any organized effort to balloon flights in India?
Well, there have been balloon flights from time to time, including some that carried mail. I remember Stephen Smith has two: balloon flight experiment number 1 and balloon flight experiment number 2. Separately, ballooning itself was a great attraction in, town fairs and events like that, where they would have people go up in balloons. There was a woman who did that in Calcutta almost 100 years ago and then jumped off from the balloon. She wanted to parachute down and injured herself. And later, of course, we have in the 1960s, 70s, 80s, a lot of ballooning events on which mail was carried. So that's a whole separate field of collecting for those who are interested.
Great. Ravi has another question, and he asks, do you know how much money was raised for the hostel?
Well, we'll have to do the math. 6,500 multiplied by 6 annas would give you an approximate figure.
Great. Dhruv Khaitan has a question, and he writes, when did commercial airmail started as a regular practice across the world?
So it started with a lot of more in-country mail, etc. So it was between the 1915 and 1920 that I think most countries started commercial airmail services. And then international flights also started in the early 20s. In India itself, there was this 1920 experiment of 7 flights between Karachi and Bombay. Didn't work out very well. It got suspended after 7 flights in March of 1920. And then there was the 1927 Basra-Cairo flights, which accelerated mail from Karachi and northwest of India going to England. And then really it was 1929 when the Karachi to Croydon service started that really we got into the age of airmail.
Great. So Adityan writes, so do you have an exact idea of how many cards canceled by the first aerial post?
So if we look at cards alone, the PK cards, Jeffrey Brown records the number as 40. It could be a little higher, 60, 70. Beyond that, how many postcards were carried, I have no idea. But clearly there have been a large number of.
Great. Any other questions? Shahid has a question. A plain unaddressed cover with a cachet, are they used as a souvenir for staff members? And is it true to understand that they are extremely rare?
So the only example I have seen is the postcard which I showed in one of my slides with the black cachet used, which was called the die proof. Other than that, I haven't seen unaddressed mail that has the cachet. And really, I mean, honestly, that would be quite worthless unless it has a black cachet. And I would wonder how it would get a magenta cachet if it was unaddressed and unflown.
Great.
And I take back what I said about being quite worthless. Sorry, because, collectors collect everything. So it would appeal, I'm sure, to a section of collectors.
So Dhruv has a question, but I'm not quite sure I understand. I'll read it out. It says, and when was postal email combined with air travel by people? I'm not quite sure, Dhruv, if you want to come on board and ask the question personally, that's fine. You can just...
Yeah, I'm sorry, I did not mean email. When was postal mail combined with air travel by people? But everybody says email and not mail these days. So I'm sorry.
Okay. So, mail and passengers have flown together forever from the time airmail started and passenger travel started. They've been flying together. Even in India, if we go back to the early 1930s, even the Tata flights, there was actually place for one passenger to be carried along with a few sacks of mail on the plane. And even if we look at the 1929 flight, the Croydon to Karachi, so they had modified, the plane was actually for Europe, it had two compartments for passengers. For India, they had one passenger compartment and one bigger compartment for the mail. So passengers were flying along with mail ever since.
Great. The next question is from Deepak Jaswal. Deepak writes, was there any additional charge for the black cachet as opposed to the magenta cachet?
I don't think the black cachet was ever used commercially. So you could not go to the post office and say, hey, cancel it with a black cachet, even if it meant paying an additional fee. I think this is just something that was perhaps controlled by Wyndham, and he just got a small quantity done to distinguish the mail.
Great. I'm just going to read out a comment because by Adityan. He writes, I'm just 13 years old and I'm new to philately. I'm interested in planes, aeroplanes, etc., and have stamps on that.
Yeah.
Well, Adityan, thank you very much for joining, and we wish you a good, long philatelic career. Any other questions? If not, then we will...
If I can ask one more.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, please.
About the forgeries of this cachet. I know that there have been some running around. Can you comment on that? Like how common they are and whether they are good forgeries or not? Have you seen anything like that?
So, material flown on this flight is generally much sought after by collectors all over the world because it marks the start of any airmail collection. So the moment that happens, these covers tend to go for an interesting price, and anything like that is bound to be forged. So there are a lot of forgeries going around. There are some people have actually posted images of forgeries and pointed out how to make out the difference between a forgery and a genuine cancellation, things like that. If you have that guide in front of you, it's relatively easy to spot. I must say I'm not an expert in detecting forgeries or in authenticating material.
Great.
May I add to this, please?
Please go ahead.
Yeah, Stephen Smith has reported forgeries even in his book, Indian Airways right at 1930. So the forgeries were rampant right from the start of the flight itself. So, yeah.
Wonderful. Well, with that, we will stop the Q&A, the questions related to Piyush's presentation.